Storytime Tinder edition. Okay, the story blew up on Twitter like a while ago, but I'm just gonna retell it because it's very informational. So there was this guy and this girl, and they met through Tinder, and then they met up and they went on this date. And they were out at dinner, and then she starts not feeling so well. And then she says, I really need to go home. And he says, yeah, I'll drive you home. And she says, okay. So then they get to her house, and then she starts feeling better. So then she says, do you want to come in for some coffee? And then he says, yeah, sure. So they go inside, they have their coffee, and then she doesn't feel well again. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel well again. I think you really need to leave. And he's like, okay. And he leaves. And then she goes to bed, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up, and she hears this noise down in her kitchen. And so she locks her door, and she calls the cop. And the 911 operator is just on the other line saying, can you just stay on the line until the cops get...
Here's a little story time of what my crazy celebrity ex-boyfriend would get mad at if I did or did not do. He would get mad if I would, for example, go to the DMV and put lip gloss on to take a picture. He said that I was trying to get attention from other guys, and the fact that he wasn't going with me proved that I was trying to get attention from other guys, therefore pickup guys at the DMV. He would also get mad if I showed him too much affection or if I tried to kiss him, because he said that that meant that I was a nymphomaniac, and that the only conclusion he could come to was that I was cheating on him because I was a nymphomaniac. So eventually I stopped being affectionate altogether, and that made him think that I didn't want him because I was never affectionate. So I told him one day, well, if I am affectionate, it's bad, but if I'm not affectionate, it's bad. And he said, you're right, so you're stuck. He would also, for some reason, think that I was Lil Wayne's side chick. So anytime a Lil Wayne song came on, I had to... Part 2 of what my celebrity ex-boyfriend would get mad at if I did or didn't do. He would get mad if I answered the phone too quick because that meant that I was hiding something and I didn't want him to be suspicious. But it also made him mad if I didn't answer the phone quick enough because that meant that I was definitely doing something bad. He would also get mad if I offered to go over to his place instead of mine because that meant I was hiding guys in my apartment, in my bathroom, and in my closet. So he would randomly show up to my apartment, check underneath my bed, my closets, and my bathrooms. And when he saw that there was no one there, he would storm out and say, I'm going to catch you one day. He would also get upset if my manager or my agent called me telling me that I had an audition because it made him envious, although he would say that what they were trying to do was actually pimp me out. He would get so envious and jealous if I had booked a commercial, if I was working on set, or if I had anything going for me in my life other than him. Time about how I got out of the abusive relationship I was in with my celebrity ex. Yes, he is a celebrity. He's on TV right now, so if you want to know who it is, go to any of my other story times. His name is all over the comments. So after he made me take the lie detector test, which turned out to be a con because he had hired a con artist without him knowing, we didn't speak for about 3 days, but then he started texting me. We were going back and forth, and I knew that in order to end things, I needed to see him in person. Even though he had broken up with me, he was still trying to get back together with me, and I knew I had to end it, otherwise he wouldn't leave me alone. At this point, he had been physically and emotionally abusive with me, but every time it was because he was on some substance, and I knew that if he got off the substances, he would just be a better person. That was just me being naive and thinking that I could help him. Of course, as soon as I get there, he begins to accuse me of having stolen something from his closet, which I couldn't have because I wasn't even with him. He looks through my purse and he gets mad because he doesn't find anything. I knew that he was on something, and I could just tell that he was very aggressive. So I thought to myself, I better leave before he blows up. This is where it gets scary. Come back for part 2. Part 2, there is a trigger warning here. When he sees there's nothing in my purse, he actually throws it over a balcony that's inside of his bedroom that there is no access to, so I couldn't actually grab my purse or my keys and leave. I head to the door and I thought, you know what, I will just sit outside and wait for him to calm down. But he doesn't let me leave, and he says, just hold on a second, I'm gonna go get some water. So he goes to the kitchen to grab some water, and then he comes back and throws the water in my face. I'm in shock at this point. Right away, I start crying instantly, and this always upset him whenever I cried, so he says, why are you crying now? And then he just acted like he hadn't thrown water in my face. I walk over to the bathroom to try to get a towel, and he does not let me get the towel. Instead, he pushes me into the shower and turns on the shower head. And he said, you definitely need to clean yourself. Who knows who you've been with? In that moment, I literally thought, what did I get myself into? I just walked into the lion's den. Then he hands me a towel. It does get scarier from here on, so come back for part 3. Part 3, trigger warning. So I get out of the shower, he hands me a towel, and then he begins to question me where I was, where I've been, and I know that he knows that I was home for that entire week because I actually saw him outside of my window one day, and I saw his car parked further away, so he knows that I was home. Then he grabbed my phone from my purse, but didn't bring my purse down, just the phone, and starts looking through it. When he didn't find anything, he said, well, you must have deleted all the messages. This is when I black out. I woke up 10 hours later, still in the towel, wrapped up in the towel underneath the comforter, and him standing over me, and he says, "You can leave now." He hands me my purse, and the look on his face is just horrendous. I could tell he had been crying all night. His eyes were super swollen. And when I look in my purse, I just see that he cut my ID, he cut my credit card, and bent my apartment key. I got dressed and I run out. Luckily, I was able to get into my apartment, even with the bent key. I waited a few days because I had some marks on me, but I then called my family. They got me a ticket to Miami. I went.
Here's a story time of when my crazy ex made me take a polygraph test. A little backstory, we had been together for 4 months at this point. 2 months into the relationship, he started acting strange. Before that, he was absolutely, completely loving and normal. So since those 2 months were perfect, we had fallen in love and we had been talking about marriage and so many other plans. But then he started acting strange. He called me and told me he had a substance abuse problem, and nothing was the same after that. So at the 4-month mark of the relationship, he had started accusing me of being an escort and being with other guys, even though I spent all of my time with him, and I even offered to install cameras into my apartment, which he did not want to. So one day that he was mad at me, I knew that he was on something. I couldn't tell exactly what, but he came up to me and asked me if I would take a polygraph test, and I said absolutely. Little did I know that the polygrapher he hired was actually a con artist, so when we show up to this man's office to take the polygraph test, it was part 2 of the polygraph test. I sit down in the chair and the polygrapher actually starts making comments about my eyes and my dress. Obviously, I was really uncomfortable. I look over at my boyfriend and he could tell that I was very uncomfortable, but he just kept the conversation going with the guy like nothing wrong was happening. In fact, he was holding my hand and making comments about how beautiful I was. Super odd behavior. Finally, the test is over and he reveals that I failed every single question, even the one about my name, where I live, and where I'm from, which is absolutely impossible. My boyfriend starts to sob instantly, and I pull out my phone and I begin to Google the guy. Lo and behold, I find 10 articles about how he's a con artist. I show it to him and then to my boyfriend, and he kicks us out of his office. He's still sobbing at this point. We drive back to his house and he's beside himself. He says, "I don't know what to believe." And I said, "Well, you can believe the articles or you can believe me. This guy was obviously a con artist." I break up with him and I go back to my apartment. A week later, he comes looking for me and he is crying, and I took him back, unfortunately.
Part 4 of what would make my celebrity ex-boyfriend crazy, jealous, and mad. Because he was so jealous and controlling, I never put my phone in my pocket or in my hand or anything like that because I didn't want him to think that I was hiding anything from him. I always left it in plain sight so that he could check it if he wanted to. So this one time my mom called me and I answered the phone. He was right there in front of me and I said, "Hi, Mom, blah, 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 blah." We had a bit of a conversation and he got up and left. So I stayed in the room and I left my phone there, and then I went to the kitchen where he was, and he comes up to me and he says, "Who was that on the phone?" And I said, "That was my mom." And he's like, "No, it wasn't. That's why I had to leave the room, because I couldn't stand listening to you lie to my face." I said, "Why don't you go check my phone to see if it's actually my mom?" So guess what he does? He goes and grabs my phone and calls my mom. He says, "Who is this?" He was so rude to her. I was mortified. And worst of all, my mom thought it was a joke, so she kind of started laughing, and then he hung up on her. After that, he didn't speak to me for at least a week, and then he broke up with me. Part 5 of what would make my celebrity ex-boyfriend crazy jealous. One of the things that would instantly make him upset was if I answered my text messages too quick when they came in. So whenever a text message would come in, I would wait 4 to 5 minutes so that he could see that I was in no rush to get it. If I did answer it too quick, he thought that I had a pimp or somebody waiting for me and that I was just getting ready to go to work. So this one time my mom messages me and I see her text message come in, so I grab my phone right away to text her back because we weren't really talking on the phone much because of him. He would always get jealous. Seeing that my mom texted me, I picked up the phone and I replied back. He grabbed it from me instantly without even saying anything and asked who it was, and I said it was my mom. He looked at all the messages. He actually read all of my messages with my mom nonstop for about 30 minutes and then came to the conclusion that it wasn't her. He then interrogated me for an hour and then he kicked me out because I wouldn't tell him who it was. Part 5 of what would make my celebrity ex super angry and jealous. He would always get mad if I was nice to our server, whether it was a man or a woman, because to him it was competition and it meant that I wanted them because I was being nice to them. I would mostly stay over at his place, and trust me, there were days where I just wanted to be by myself. So in order for me to go home, I would have to come up with an excuse like I was waiting for a package, or I had to go clean my apartment, or my landlord needed me there, because if I went home, he would get mad. Part 7 of what would make my celebrity ex crazy, jealous, and mad. He would always get mad if I would go run errands by myself, so eventually I had to ask him to go everywhere with me, but then this made him think that I was clingy, although I had to act like I was clingy so that he thought that I wanted to be with him all the time, but I didn't really. Everyone wants their own space, for goodness sake, just to go to run errands. I could never show him that I was independent, because if I showed him that I was independent, it meant that I didn't need him, and that terrified him. He would also get mad if I spent too much time on my laptop, so any work I had to do, I would have to do it really fast, because otherwise he would be right there over my shoulder looking and asking what I was doing, and I hated that. I've had a lot of DMs from girls saying that they've had similar situations or that they're currently in a similar situation, and I'm happy to be able to help you guys. If you're in a really toxic relationship right now or being abused in any sort of way, please look out for yourself. Please find help. Please tell your family if you can.